It has been snowing here in Columbus for 3 days straight. The sky is completely gray, and honestly, this weather makes it so easy to just stay in bed and ignore the world.
I know exactly what you mean. Ohio winters have a way of testing your mental strength. You wake up, it is dark. You leave work, it is dark. It creates this heavy feeling of being stuck.
And that feeling of being stuck is what I want to talk about today. Because I look around and I see people working hard, but they are exhausted. Not physically tired, but mentally drained.
The exhaustion comes from the invisible weight they carry. It is the credit card debt they never discuss. It is the fear of growing older and realizing they do not have enough money saved for retirement.
That is so true. I was speaking with a friend recently who makes a decent salary, but he confessed he cannot sleep. He owes $20,000 across 3 credit cards. He smiles at work, but inside, he is terrified.
That is the quiet desperation most people live in. They do not lose in life because they lack intelligence or talent. They lose because they never learned the rules of building a resilient mind. They just try to survive the month.
Which brings us to the first rule we need to discuss. Master yourself first. We often try to change our external circumstances before fixing our internal habits.
Exactly. Your biggest enemy is your lack of control over yourself. Think about the person who stays awake until 2 in the morning scrolling on their phone. They know they have to work the next day, but they refuse to sleep.
Psychologists call that revenge bedtime procrastination. People feel they have so little control over their daily work hours that they steal time at night just to feel a sense of freedom, even though it destroys their energy.
That is a perfect example of poor self-mastery. True self-mastery means choosing what is required over what is comfortable. If you cannot make yourself sleep on time, how can you expect to build wealth or a successful career?
It sounds very uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable in the beginning. It feels like a constant struggle against your own mind. But every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-trust. And self-trust eventually replaces the need for motivation.
That leads perfectly to the second rule. Stay consistent when it gets boring. People start a new diet or a new business in January, and by February, the excitement is completely gone.
Because they depend on a dopamine rush. Here is a fascinating biological fact. Real skill acquisition in the brain depends on a process called myelination. Myelin is a substance that wraps around your neural pathways to make signals move faster.
I have heard of that. The more you practice, the thicker the myelin gets.
Yes, but here's the catch. The brain only wraps myelin thickly when you repeat an action endlessly, past the point of excitement. Growth literally happens when you are bored, but you choose to do the work anyway.
That changes my entire perspective. We are taught that if we feel bored, we should find a new passion. But actually, boredom is the exact moment the brain is solidifying the habit.
Precisely. Amateurs stop when it gets boring. Professionals understand that the boring phase is where all the money is made and all the true stability is built.
So how do we do that in a world full of distractions? Which brings up rule number 3. Protect your focus. Everyone is constantly distracted by their phones.
It is worse than just being distracted. There is a psychological concept called attention residue. When you look at a text message and then return to your work, a part of your brain is still processing the message.
Meaning you are never operating at 100% capacity if you keep checking your notifications.
Exactly. You lose up to 20% of your cognitive function just by quickly checking an email. Your attention is your most valuable asset. If you let every notification steal it, you will never accomplish deep work.
I notice this in our local economy too. The people here in Ohio who transition successfully from factory jobs to remote tech jobs are the ones who can sit alone for 3 hours and just learn the skill without looking at their phones.
Focus is a massive competitive advantage today. Most people simply cannot do it. They sit down to work, and 5 minutes later, they are watching random videos, comparing their lives to strangers on the internet.
Which causes so much pain. When you constantly compare yourself, you feel like a failure. And that brings us to Rule 4: learn from every loss.
People are terrified of failure, especially in mid-sized towns where everyone knows each other. If you start a small business and it closes, the shame can be unbearable.
I have seen that happen. A neighbor of mine opened a restaurant, and it failed within 8 months. He felt so embarrassed, he isolated himself completely.
That is because he attached his identity to the result. Failure is not a judgment on your personal value. Failure is simply data. It is feedback telling you that your strategy was wrong.
So instead of saying, "I am a failure," you should say, "My approach failed. What is the lesson here?"
Exactly. You must separate your self-worth from your actions. Every wealthy or successful person I know has lost money, made terrible investments, or been fired. They just adjusted their actions and tried again.
Which demands an incredible amount of endurance. And that brings us to the final and maybe most important rule: never give up, no matter what.
It sounds like a cliche, but it is the hardest rule to live by. There will be days when you look at your children or your aging parents and you feel a deep panic that you are running out of time.
That is the silent pressure no one acknowledges. The fear that despite all your hard work, you will end up average, struggling to pay for medical bills when you are 60.
That fear is real, but quitting guarantees that exact nightmare will happen. Continuing, even slowly, is the only way to prevent it. Winners are simply people who felt the exact same fear and exhaustion, but chose to take one more step.
So the message today is very clear. Do not wait for motivation. Start taking control of your daily actions right now, in the cold, gray days when no one is watching and you feel exhausted.
Absolutely. Motivation is an unreliable friend. Discipline is the partner that stays with you. Apply these rules today. Control one habit, protect your focus for just 1 hour, and trust the process.